Alright, man, we back. Goku and DC, Season 4, Episode 13. Alright, this would be Aquaman versus Nappa rematch. So let's get into it. Of course, you already know I got to shout out the members, man. Shout out Jason 57835, John Lane 2016, OD Demon Wolf 34, and Quade Moke. And also, what I want to say is, I decided I guess I'll make like a membership goal or something, right? So if I get 10 members, on YouTube, I'm gonna start adding voices to characters, man. Voices to characters for the story. Let me know what y'all think about that. Anyway, let's get into the story. The crimson-lit street was choked with rubble and the chittering sounds of monsters. From a side alley, a pack of the resurrected Demon King's lesser spawn emerged, twisted, 7-foot-sized horrors with bladed limbs and eyes like smoldering red embers. They fanned out with their movements, a grotesque parody of a pride on the hunt, growling as they closed in on a darkened from the top. A shadow massive winged, blotted out with reddish glow as a pterodactyl with scales like weathered jade and eyes of cold amber dropped like a feather missile. It didn't land, it struck. A talon foot snatched the lead spawn mid-scuttle, lifting it into the air before Beast Boy changed form in a flash of green and became a colossal titanoboa, binding the demon creature until an audible crunch was heard. Before the others could react, the snake vanished, replaced by a massive squid whose tentacles descended on the pack. A cloud of tendrils wrapped around their necks. The green form coalesced back into Beast Boy's humanoid form, landing in a crouch between the discarded monsters and the terrified family. He cracked his neck, a fierce, confident grin splitting his face as he took in the snarling bladed horrors that were before him. They weren't earthly animals. They were demonic alien abominations. They're part of the demon clan. All right. But they were new. Huh, he mused, his voice a low growl of anticipation. He'd spent years mastering the forms of Earth's creatures, the strength of a gorilla, the speed of a cheetah, the venom of a king cobra. He even got into the dinosaur biology. But these things, they were something else. It was like a fresh template, a new challenge. His grin widened, showing a hint of fang. Blades for arms, creepy bodies with nasty attitudes. He rolled his shoulders, his form already beginning to shimmer and distort with, "Looks like I'm working with some new material." The last word dissolved into the shriek of an owl as he launched himself to study, to adapt, and add the devil's own designs to his new shifting arsenal. High above the clouds, the air was thin and bitterly cold, but the hellish crimson glow from below stained the stratosphere with a feverish light. Goku hovered, his eyes closed. He wasn't resisting. He was feeling. His senses stretched across the ravaged planet like a psychic net, tuning into the chaotic symphony of battles that were all throughout the earth. The most violent crescendo was easy to find. It vibrated with familiar brutal hatred, amplified by a deep demonic wrongness. Had to be Nappa. That particular brand of Saiyan rage was a beacon of pure malice, turned up to times 10. But there was another strand there intertwined with it, powerful, regal, a signature thrumming with the fury of the deep ocean and the sting of revenge. Had to be Aquaman. Their energies were clashing violently, a storm of vengeance meeting an avalanche of hate. Another discordant note sang out. It was two of them, actually both, and they were chillingly familiar. Piccolo, but not one. Two. Their energies were a twisted mirror, one ancient and saturated with cosmic evil, and the other was conflicted. The younger Piccolo's signature was a storm of its own, the familiar honed emerald fury that he knew, but now woven through with crackling divine lightning and a core of grim resolve. He was fighting the older, fouler version of himself. Sounded like a family reunion from hell. Then he felt the flash. Barry's energy was frantic. It was a frantic, vibrating hum of motion and desperation. But something was wrong. The usual brilliant, clean frequency of the speed force that he'd grown accustomed to seemed to be tangled and strained. He was in trouble, but the nature of it was murky. He didn't know exactly who he was fighting. Goku probed deeper, frowning. There was the source of Barry's distress. It was like a cold, precise void where an energy signature should be. It wasn't hiding. It's like it wasn't there. An absence that consumed the energy around it. A weapon with no aura. A predator that didn't breathe. That's because, Slade's an android. Androids don't have key signatures. Anyway, his jaw tightened. Barry was smart and resourceful. He could buy time. The two Piccolos, that seemed to be a personal war of its own, and it was a battle for the very soul. Arthur, though. Goku's eyes snapped open, reflecting the bloody sky. Arthur's pain wasn't just from the fight. It was fresh and personal. He lost an arm to that monster, and he was facing Nappa alone this time, driven by a rage that could cloud judgment. A corrupted Saiyan elite with time to ramp up was definitely a planetary threat. Arthur was holding the line, but he was in the most immediate danger of being overwhelmed by pure, unadulterated brutality. Arthur first, Goku muttered, his voice a low rumble. He uncrossed his legs, orienting his body with a decisive nod. He became a blue meteor tearing through the crimson haze on a new trajectory. The sonic boom that followed was a promise. Help was coming for the King of Atlantis. The ruined city block was a graveyard of shattered steel and glass. In its center, Aquaman stood like a monolith of orange and green. Well, I guess it wouldn't be orange because I decided to get him dripped out with no shirt this time. His jaw set in a line of granite, his gaze colder than the deepest trench. He was locked on Nappa's smirking face. The memory of their last encounter wasn't a thought. It was a phantom pain, a searing ache in the ghost of his forearm. This time there would be no threat. This time there would be no retreat and no holding back. With a roar that seemed to pull sound from the very air, Aquaman raised his trident high. The enchanted prongs hummed not with lightning this time, but with a deep thrumming call that resonated through the unseen waterways of the world itself. He didn't summon a tidal wave, he commanded the sky. He slammed the butt of the trident down onto the fractured asphalt. Boom! The impact wasn't just physical. It was like a seismic prayer to the heavens. The swirling crimson-tainted clouds overhead convulsed, darkened, and tore open. The deluge that followed was almost biblical. It wasn't just rain. It was like the ocean falling from the sky. Icy, torrential sheets of water hammered down, instantly flooding the streets, turning craters into whirlpools, washing the ash and blood into choking rivers within seconds. The battlefield was transformed into a shallow, churning sea, the water level rising past their very knees. Aquaman drew a deep breath, and the power of the seven seas filled him. Every drop that touched his skin was like a battery charge. Every current an extension of his will. His muscles swelled with enhanced supernatural strength. This was his domain now. Nappa, now standing in the rushing water, wiped a steam from his bald head. No, I said the right stream the first time. His earlier annoyance melted into a sadistic wide grin. The rain plastered his scouterless face and dripped from his jagged teeth. So that's your play, fishman. Nappa's voice cut through the roar of the downpour. He cracked his neck, his demonic aura flaring, causing the water around him to steam and hiss. You think a little bath is going to slow me down? He took a step forward, a tidal wave of malice preceding him. All you've done is make the ground soggy for your own grave. He raised a fist, energy crackling around it, ignoring the water that sizzled away on contact. Congratulations. It's about to be a wet funeral. The stage was set. The king of the seas, empowered by the storm, faced the resurrected brute, fueled by the power of hell itself, it seemed. The floodwaters trembled in anticipation of the coming collision. Nappa didn't charge with strategy or finesse. He became a living meteor. Water parted before him in a steaming wake as he crossed the flooded streets in a blur. His fist pulled back like a piston, primed to detonate. The air around his knuckles screamed, compressed into a violent nimbus of pure demonic force. Aquaman braced, planting his feet in the submerged asphalt. He didn't dodge. Vengeance demanded meeting Fury head on this time. He swung his trident horizontally, catching the world-ending punch, not on the points, but across the broad enchanted metal of its central shaft. Crack! The impact was a thunderclap that vaporized the rain in a 10-foot sphere. A shockwave of concussive force and displaced water radiated outward, shattering every remaining window from a block away. The sound was less a clash of weapons and more of like a mountain breaking. Aquaman's boots immediately dug trenches through the streets, then through the foundation beneath. He grunted, every muscle in his body and his one good arm straining against a pressure that felt geologic. Nappa's grin was rictus of glee, inches from his face. Feeling stronger now, Guppy? Nappa sneered, his voice vibrating through the trident. My new boss gave me a hell of a raise. You couldn't match me back then, so you're a nobody now. With a final contemptuous roar, Nappa shoved. The impossible force overwhelmed Arthur's water-enhanced strength. He was driven forward like a skipped stone, his body plowing through the flooded ruin of a bank's brick facade. The building, already gutted, gave one shuddering groan, then with a roar of collapsing masonry and twisted metal, it came down in an avalanche of debris, burying both warrior and Saiyan in a tomb of stone and raging water. Silence fell, broken only by the relentless hissing of the rain itself. The mountain of rubble erupted not with a slow heave, but with a violent hydraulic explosion. Chunks of stone and mortar were blasted aside as Aquaman surged upward, a sovereign of wrath rising from his own grave. He didn't climb out. He was ejected by the force of his own fury. Nappa, brushing from his shoulder, barely had time to register the movement before a blur of blonde and a glint of blackened like steel shot across a short distance. It wasn't the trident, it was the other arm. The one that ended not in a hand, but in a cruel nub, or so he thought, but now revealed a barbed point of an Atlantean harpoon hook. There was no dramatic wind-up, just a savage, precise shh. The hook found its mark, not on armor, but on flesh. It carved a deep, gouging trench across Nappa's right eye. A spray of dark ichor-like blood mixed with the rain. Nappa's roar of anger was instantly eclipsed by a raw, shocked bellow of pain. Ugh! A sound more beast than warrior. Using the momentum of the brutal strike, Aquaman pivoted. He planted his foot on Nappa's chest and pushed off into a powerful backflip. He landed 20 feet away in the churning water, crouching and ready, his trident back in his grip. Rains slushed the grime from his face, revealing a fierce, cold smirk that didn't touch his eyes. He raised his hook, the point still dripping with sand blood, and gave it a slight, mocking twist in the downpour. You're not the only one with upgrades, ape, Aquaman growled, his voice cutting through the storm. An arm for an eye. Rage, hotter and more volatile than any energy blast, consumed Nappa. The searing pain in his eye socket burned away the last shred of his mocking amusement. This wasn't a fight anymore. This was a soon-to-be eradication. Enough, he bellowed, the sound raw and guttural. He ignored the streaming blood, raising both hands high, fingers splayed toward the weeping crimson sky, as violent energy, thick and crackling with hellish static, coalesced between his palms into a writhing sphere of annihilating power. He wasn't aiming, he was deleting. With a final wordless roar of pure malice, he slammed his palms downward. The world turned white, then silent. The explosion wasn't a blast from a point. It was like an instantaneous creation of a 400-yard sphere of complete annihilation. The ground ceased to exist, vaporized into superheated glass, a crater that was more than 10 feet deep. The flooding waters vanished in a shriek of steam. The ruins of buildings, the rubble, the very air, everything within that perfect circle was subjected to a microsecond of like star-core fury. Aquaman had seen the telltale energy build up, and with a powerful thrust of his own legs, he launched himself skyward, a heartbeat before the detonation. But it wasn't really enough. The shockwave traveling through the ground and air faster than sound caught him. It was a physical wall of concussive force that hammered into his back, smothering his leap. The searing heat of the vaporized cityscape licked at his armor, scorching the edges of his skin. A hailstorm of superheated debris, molten stone, shredded metal, and crystalline silica pelted him like an infernal shrapnel. He grunted, teeth clenched against the barrage of kinetic and thermal punishment. His body wrenched through the air. He had been caught in the heart of the blast, but the periphery was a maelstrom of fury that had left him battered and dazed, and crashing down toward the newly forged smoldering hellscape. Below, Nappa had leveled the battlefield. Now there was nowhere left to run. Before Aquaman could even right himself in the air, the world blurred. Nappa, a smoldering phantom wreathed in a dissipating steam, and violent after him just didn't fly after him. It was like he just appeared. Trigon's power that had honed the brute's explosive burst into something terrifyingly precise. One moment he was a distant figure in a crater, the next his shadow fell over Aquaman from behind. There was no taunt, no war cry, only the grim, silent efficiency of a soon-to-be killing blow. A massive hand, hard as bedrock and crackling with residual energy, clamped onto the back of Aquaman's neck. The grip was absolute, freezing the Atlantean King's momentum. Dread, then with a contemptuous upward heave, Nappa slammed him into the planet. Crunch! Aquaman hit the glassy, still smoking floor of the crater, back first. The impact wasn't a collision. It was like it was a meteor strike. A new, smaller crater bloomed beneath him, a spiderweb of fractures radiating through the superheated earth. The air exploded from his lungs in a pained gasp. He had no time to recover, to draw breath, to think. Nappa's boot, a armored piston, drove into his ribs with the force of like a train derailment. Thump! The kick lifted Aquaman clean off the ground. He didn't tumble. He was launched in a flat, helpless trajectory, skimming across the glassy wasteland like a stone script across an obsidian lake. He crashed through a jagged, upthrust spine of cooled magma, the impact spinning him violently before he finally came to a crumpled, steaming stop several hundred feet away. A trail of shattered glass and scorched earth marking his path. Nappa cracked his neck, his single good eye fixed on the distant, motionless form of his opponent. Every breath was fire. Ribs screamed in protest as Aquaman pushed himself up. One arm trembling, the other, the hooked one, digging into the glass for purchase. His trident, still gripped in his fist, felt impossibly heavy now. He used it as a crutch, hauling his battered body upright. Water dripped from his hair, mingling with the blood on his lip, the last remnants of his summoned storm. From across the scorched plain, Nappa's laughter rolled toward him. Joyless sound, still twitching. Tough little goldfish. He raised his right hand palm up as a sphere of energy, not violet this time, but a deep, boiling crimson, the raw color of Trigon's fire, began to swirl and coalesce. It crackled with a malevolent intelligence hungry for life to snuff out. Enough flopping around. Time to fry some fish. The air sizzled, the heat from the gathering blast warped the view between them. Aquaman didn't cover, he didn't plead, planting his feet firmly in the ashes of the city he was at. He raised his chin. His blue eyes, though clouded with pain, held no fear, only a cold, unwavering resolve. He tightened his grip on his trident, its points lowering, not in surrender, but in a final, defiant stance. He was a king. He would meet the end on his feet, staring into the face of the monster. He awaited the searing oblivion not with terror, but with a sovereign's grim acceptance. Nappa's finger began to curl, the finer trigger squeeze for the executioner blast that was to come. A comet struck from the side. There was no warning roar, no theatrical declaration, just a searing concentrated beam of a blue and white missile that materialized from the smoky haze and hammered into Nappa's ribs with the force of a divine hammer. It wasn't a wide area blast meant to destroy, it was a precise hypersonic punch of pure energy designed to maximize displacement. Pow! The impact lifted the massive Saiyan clean off his feet. The crimson hell sphere in his hand fizzled and vanished, Completely forgotten, it seemed. He sailed sideways, a look of stunned irritation. What? Flashing across his face before he became a demolition ball. He crashed through the skeletal remains of a concrete support pillar, then plowed into a mountain of unstable rubble that had once been a parking garage. Metal shrieked, concrete exploded, and a fresh cloud of dust bloomed, burying him under tons of debris. Silence returned sharper than before. The only sounds were the hiss of cooling glass and Aquaman's ragged breathing. From the settling dust, a figure emerged, landing lightly between the Atlantean king and the new rubble pile. It was an orange gi with black hair, a stance both relaxed and ready. Goku didn't look at the wreckage. His eyes were on Arthur. His expression a mix of relief and a grim apology was on his face. Sorry I'm late, Goku said, his voice cutting through the tense quiet. Goku stood as a steadfast shield between the fallen king and the settling dust cloud. He didn't take his eyes off the rubble pile, his posture deceptively calm ever since he tuned to the raging energy signature that was buried within. Behind him, Aquaman let out a slow, pained breath, the tension in his shoulders easing a fraction. Your timing, he grunted, using his trident to fully rise, remains infuriatingly dramatic. A ghost of a smile touched his bloody lips. But the assistance is appreciated, old friend. Goku gave a short, acknowledging nod, his gaze still fixed forward. I had a feeling you could use a hand. The gratitude was cut short by a low seismic rumble. The mountain of rubble erupted outwards. Now with an explosion move with a violent, dismissive shrug. Chunks of concrete and twisted rebar were hurled aside like pebbles as Nappa pushed himself to his feet. Dust and debris cascaded from his scorched armor. The gruesome gash across his eye still wept, but it was his expression that was fully fearsome, a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. He brushed a chunk of cement from his shoulder, his single good eye scanning the battlefield, and it locked onto the new arrival. The recognition was instant, sparking a deeper, more personal hatred that cut through the demonic rage, it seemed. His lips peeled back from his teeth in a snarl that was more promise than a threat. You, Nappa spat, the word dripping with venomous contempt. The runt from the stars. Should have known you'd still be buzzing around. He cracked his knuckles, a sound like snapping timber in the sudden quiet. Good. Saves me the trouble of hunting you down later, runt. And that's going to be the end of this episode, man. Let me know what you guys think. Once again, man, I decided to make a little goal, man. If I get 10 members, man, I'm going to try to add voices to this story. We'll see how that goes. And let me know what y'all think in the comments below. We already got 4 members. We just need 6 to go. Anyways, man, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.